Okay, Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning briefing from the Celtic Way with me, Hamish and Ryan. Hello, Ryan.
Hi mate, how you doing? You all good?
I am all good. People have started asking me how I am. You did it. I think is it just you, Tony? I think no, Tony does it as well. John doesn't bother. John obviously doesn't care about my little
Straight
life.
into
Eh?
it.
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, things are good. We've got stuff to chat about today as well. Before we do that, today's video is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh, and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. We've got terrible patter in the live chat, Ryan. Edward Y of Oz, is Sinisalo the finished product?
Knew that
You
was
make it
coming.
that.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. There's been a couple of jokes made in some of my group chats as well, roughly with the same sort of subject line in terms of finished goalkeepers. The Anthony Emi stuff keeps on going about decades on after that talk sport call in from the guy that thought he was Scottish. He's not finished, he's only 28. How many times does that get? It seems like every international break, and now that Celtic have got a finished goalkeeper, you're going to hear that more and more. But yeah, as much as I'm disappointed about the Kasper Schmeichel news, the fact that the injury looks like it's probably going to be quite a serious one for him, it brings an opportunity for the likes of Sinisalo. You know, somebody that's not really had a chance. All he's had is that game against Raith Rovers. But it looks as if he's going to get a longer run in the team,
Yeah.
which in itself is a big opportunity for him.
Okay, we might dip in and talk about that a fair bit. Me and John did chat a bit about it yesterday, but there might be a wee update on Schmeichel. Just before that, hot off the press, everyone, because we did get a comment in there from Jerry saying now the international break is over. Jerry, it's not quite over yet. It might be for the European teams. Japan kick off in 26 minutes. And the big news is Daizen Maeda starting up front for Japan tonight or this morning, whatever way you want to look at it. They're hosting Saudi Arabia. As you may have heard, Japan have already qualified for the World Cup. So I'm just looking at their team, maybe a few changes, although still pretty strong with, they've got a Nakamura in there and names you know like Itakura and Kamada and Sugawara and Endo, I think, from Liverpool. But Daizen Maeda is up front for Japan. Rio Hatate on the bench as they take on Saudi Arabia. So I guess that's good news in terms of Daizen's clearly shaking off any dead leg or whatever he had after the derby.
Yeah, I think that's the main takeaway to take from that is the fact that he's starting. There's no injury concerns with him. He's Celtic's most informed player and most important player, you would say, this season. Although some people could say Kasper Schmeichel could be just as important in terms of the back line or in between the sticks and goals. But Daizen Maeda, in terms of a focal point up front, in terms of a goal scorer, it's great to see him playing for Japan, even just for that exposure as well. You know, it's clear that Moriyasu likes playing him up front. He's played there before in the World Cup for Japan. Delighted to see him get his chance once again against a good team in Saudi Arabia. I've spoken about it a couple of times on this podcast that Saudi Arabia are a bit of an emerging nation when it comes to football. You know, they got that massive scalp against eventual winners of the World Cup, Argentina, I remember on their first match day. So they are a team that's improving with these international appearances and qualifying. Should be a difficult game for Japan, but hopefully Maeda can get through that game unscathed and get back to Scotland as soon as possible because he'll be needed, especially on Saturday against Hearts. Celtic will be looking to bounce back, and in order to do so, they'll need that. They'll need their best players to do that. So as long as Maeda gets through unscathed, maybe get a goal or two here or there, but get back to Celtic unscathed and ready for the final rundown of games.
I was just thinking, I mean, you'd fancy him for a goal tonight, wouldn't you, for Japan? Or again, this morning, as most of you will be watching it, is tonight here and tonight in Japan. But you would fancy him to get on the score sheet. So yeah, main thing hopefully comes through unscathed, and it's a relatively short turnaround, isn't it? Because we're at Tuesday, obviously Saturday afternoon we take on Hearts. So not long for Rio and Daizen to get up the road. Thank you, Steve. I was just looking to see the South Korea situation. My score app hasn't actually got their team on it yet, but Steve's saying Yang is on the bench for South Korea. They kick off in 48 minutes time. So 11 a.m. for you, Ryan. They're at home to Jordan. So Yang, I think he got 5 minutes in South Korea's first. So we've got our eyes on Yang, Dyson, and Rio, and I'd have all three of them in an ideal world in our starting lineup for Saturday. But I wonder if any of them will be in our starting lineup for Saturday. I guess Dyson's one that he's just in so much good form that you would kind of force him back into the team. But Yang, I would love to have seen Yang in the team ahead of Kuhn just for this weekend, because I think Kuhn needs a wee kind of shake up, and I think Yang would have earned it. But just with the travelling and stuff, it might be difficult for these Asian-based players to make it back and start on Saturday.
Yeah, but it's a quick turnaround. But at the same time, these players are used to doing that. That's the sacrifices that they've got to take and got to make in order to play for European teams. If they are getting called up for their country, they know that it's going to be a quick turnaround. You know, look at what Daizen Maeda did against Rangers back in 2022. He appeared on the bench after playing for Japan. What was it? Something like 48 hours after playing for Japan or something like that.
Less
Or it
than
might have
that,
been even been lesser than that. But that's a measure of the player and his willingness. I liked his comments that came out yesterday to Japanese media saying that he's completely focused on doing well for Celtic. He doesn't want to speak about any moves whatsoever. He's very much a laser focused player. He plays like that on the pitch, focused on his job and his objective, but he's like that off the pitch to the media. Admittedly, he is a bit more chatty with the Japanese media, which is understandable because there's not a language barrier between the two. It doesn't need to work through an interpreter or translator. But I like hearing these comments from him, from the Japanese media, because he's clearly more at home and willing to talk to that press. And you get more of an insight into how he feels when he goes out in these international breaks, because he is a bit of a cagey customer when he's speaking to the Scottish media, but it's completely understandable.
Yeah, just hoping, as I say, Daizen Maeda starting for Japan. Hoping he scores ideally, but certainly come through all right and get yourself back to Glasgow, because we're going to need him for the rest of the season. Okay, yeah, Charlie, we covered the Ida stuff yesterday. Adam Ida scored a winner for Ireland. So I don't know if you caught yesterday's video, but if you fancy a bit of Adam Ida, chat, me and John covered them probably for about 10 minutes on yesterday's video. What's the situation with Kasper? Hazel saying looks like it'll be Friday at the earliest before we hear anything. I think unless Celtic do like a sit down with Brendan Rodgers on Celtic TV before then, and even then they don't tend to ask about injuries. I think it probably will be Friday's press conference. Has there been any update on Kasper Schmeichel, Ryan? You gone muted, I think, Ryan. I can take over. Hamish, has there been any update on Kasper Schmeichel? I'm not sure there has been.
Yes,
to be
there has
honest.
been.
There has been. Hamish, you're wrong. Ryan, take it away.
Sorry. My screen froze as I was on the article when I was double checking just to get my facts clear. Danish media is reporting that it's not a minor issue with Kasper Schmeichel, so it looks like it might be a lengthy spell on the sidelines, which put him in jeopardy for some major games coming up for Celtic in the business end of the season. You know, you see the clips of him, you see him wincing in pain and shouting in pain when the injury is sustained. When you get to the shoulder, and it's bad at any age, but a 38-year-old coming towards, the twilight, the end of his career, these are difficult injuries to come back from, and longer injuries to come back from. So it's not an ideal situation as you're going into big games at the end of the season where you would want Kasper Schmeichel. You want him to be front and centre. Not too busy, of course, but you want him to be front and centre of Celtic, winning trophies, winning leagues, etc. Winning the Scottish Cup, of course, potentially. But with chaos comes opportunity. There's the chaos of Kasper Schmeichel's injury, but there's opportunity now for Sinisalo. Here's your chance. Here's this plan, this so-called plan that's been spoke about by Sinisalo over the past year. He's going to work in the background, wait for his opportunity, and then hopefully take his chance when it comes. It's maybe come at the wrong time or the wrong way, because he won't want his teammate and self-confessed idol and Kasper Schmeichel to go down injured. But you know, he can't feel sorry for his teammate. He's got to take it with both hands, literally, and become that number one goalkeeper that we've been waiting on all season. There was excitement, and I was writing about this yesterday. There was excitement when Sinisalo came in, when people started reading about what he'd achieved for Exeter City. You know, you heard Gary Caldwell's comments. He was his manager at Exeter City, saying he's going to have a sensational career ahead of him. Loads of different people down south were really touting him for big things. Aston Villa fans were absolutely gutted to see him go. I remember that being the overriding comment from Aston Villa fans, which is always a good sign. You know, they've got a couple of really good goalkeepers in Olsen and Martinez, but they wanted to keep Sinisalo around. I think that speaks that speaks volumes about the sort of player that Sinisalo will hopefully become at Celtic. Now's his chance. He's got to take it. And a clean sheet and a good win against Hearts would be a perfect way to start that. He didn't get any game time yesterday either, I don't believe. I think it was Hradecki that played the 90 minutes for Finland. He's also in a similar position for his national team, where he's got a couple of really good goalkeepers in front of him. Hradecki and I think it's Jesse Jensen from Venezia as well. Two players that have got quite a few caps between them. So still got a bit to go before he's Finland's number one, but the signs are looking good.
Yeah, I think sometimes as fans we probably overstate the kind of task for someone like Sinisalo coming into Celtic. He'll have been waiting for this. I mean, it's a horrible thing to have to wait for Kasper Schmeichel to get an injury, but he'll have been waiting for an opportunity to potentially get a few games in a row under his belt. And as we say, we still don't really know the situation with Schmeichel, but it certainly seems like we're not going to see Schmeichel this weekend. I think it's fair to say. Who knows? We'll, as I say, we'll wait and see. But Sinisalo looks like he's certainly going to get an opportunity this weekend, and I just think he'll be ready to go. And it's good he's already played for us. I know we got some comments yesterday saying, maybe we should have seen more of him in case this happened. We've only seen him for one game, but the positives are that he's made his debut. We're not going to see a debut on Saturday from a goalkeeper. And yeah, it's a bigger game than Wraith Rovers on Saturday, a tougher game, but that was a Scottish Cup tie with a fair bit riding on it. And I know he didn't have much to do, but he looked polished enough. So yeah, I think he'll be fine. And obviously you'd rather Kasper was there, and I think clearly we're going to miss Kasper, not just as a goalkeeper, but as a experienced figure in that team. But I think it could almost be a blessing in disguise potentially to get a real good look at Sinisalo, and then hopefully he really impresses us. And what you really want, I don't know if this would ever happen, what you really want is when Kasper comes back, there to be a debate about who our first choice goalkeeper is. I think while Kasper's there, it's always going to be him because he's Kasper Schmeichel. But really, if we could find out all about Sinisalo and find out whether he's got what it takes to be our future number one, probably season after next. So I feel all right about it. I think losing Kasper is going to be a blow, but Sinisalo, as I say, seems like a confident guy. He'll have been waiting for this opportunity. Now he just needs to go and take it. Fair chance he probably doesn't have a lot to do on Saturday anyway, but if he's needed, he has to be there.
It has to be, yeah. He's been waiting 8 months for this extended run of game time in the Celtic lineup. You know, he obviously had that debut against Wraith Rovers, but that was just a one-off game. It was a bit weird because he didn't get any League Cup action, which made me think that he was maybe not ready to play for Celtic. Kasper Schmeichel played every single League Cup game, and then Schmeichel came back in for the other Scottish Cup games. But it was all because of an injury to Kasper Schmeichel. There was a slight injury that he sustained. That was the reason why Sinisalo was brought into the starting lineup. So it's all been down to injury. Any of his game time that comes between now and the end of the season is probably because Kasper Schmeichel was injured. And that's a credit to Schmeichel because he has really made that number one jersey, as we all expected him to, his own. There was a bit of doubt when he was coming in. You know, no doubt about the name. You know, famous name, obviously the way his dad played, and also his own legacy that he's made in the Premier League himself, playing for the likes of Leicester, and then further afield with Anderlecht and Nice, etc. Manchester City earlier on in his career. But he's done so well to become just a main part of Celtic. You know, one of those heartbeats of the team, another leader, and there you would expect a leader, you know, given his frame, his imposing figure, his voice both on and off the pitch. So it is going to be a loss. Another leader is lost, but I think one of the positives is that Callum McGregor's injury isn't too serious and he looks as if he's going to be coming back for that Hearts game. You need leaders, especially in games against Hearts. You know, I know we're talking about how Sinisalo might not have a lot to do, but Hearts one of those teams that are up and down, but I think they've turned a bit of a corner since the turn of the year. They're a better team than the team that Celtic faced beforehand. You know, that 4-1 game that they played at Tynecastle, I think they're a far better team. You know, they've made some solid acquisitions with the Jamestown analytics. They're actually going into analytics to buy players, and those players are then improving Hearts under Neil Critchley. So it'll be interesting to see how they line up against Celtic. I think it's a perfect game for Celtic to come back into. You know, out with a Rangers game, if you want a game with a bit of passion, then Celtic Hearts at Celtic Park will definitely notch up those decibels at Celtic Park ever so slightly. So I'm looking forward to sampling that on Saturday. It's a good game to come back to, and hopefully a good game for Celtic to bounce back from that Glasgow derby defeat.
Do we have that earlier on in the season? I think it was after the first international break. We came back to a home game against Hearts, and it was the one when Arnie Engels scored. I think in his first start, he scored the penalty. And remember the Hearts players, was it Halkett was giving him the 11 million, you're having a laugh, or whatever it was. Yeah. And then he stuck away the penalty. So from a memory that day, I don't think we were particularly brilliant, but we got the job done. Do you foresee something similar on Saturday, or do you think it'll be, you know, Celtic really back at it?
I think it'll be a difficult game on Saturday, and I hope it's a difficult game because I think Celtic play better when they're challenged like that. Granted, the last time against Rangers was a bit of an example of them not playing well, but I just think a game against Hearts, you know, it could have been other teams in the league. You know, I know Celtic are playing St Johnstone a week on Sunday. I'm glad it's a team like Hearts and they can't just, you know, sleepwalk into this game. They know that they have to bounce back, and Hearts will be up for it. You know, they'll have aspirations of finishing as high as they can after a dreadful start to the season. Obviously, a change of manager, Stephen Naismith getting the bullet and Neil Critchley coming in. Been up and down, but I think for the most part they can see those positive signs with the Brighton analytics coming into play, as well as players coming to the fore. So I think it'll be a difficult game for Celtic, but at the same time it could be a beneficial game in terms of getting them back, you know, getting them prepped. I think that, in my opinion, I think if Celtic are to get to the Scottish Cup final, I think it will be a Celtic Hearts final, because Hearts will beat Aberdeen in the semi-final. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that will be the case.
Really?
So it could be a good dress rehearsal for a potential Scottish Cup final between the two sides at the end of the season. And for what it's worth, I kind of hope it's Celtic against Hearts, because that's a great final, and it just reminds me of the treble when Edward scored the double on that historic day for Celtic. I just think Celtic against Hearts is always a good fixture. Don't get me wrong, Aberdeen Celtic's a good fixture too, but Celtic Hearts always has that little bit of bite about it as well, a bit of passion. And I always enjoy going to it, whether it's home or away or at a neutral venue.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to Saturday's game. And just to be honest, I'm hoping for a good performance, obviously, but I think, to be honest, just 3 points. We need a bit of a settler, I think, on Saturday. Just after the way the derby went, I think winning is the most important thing. Move us forward, and then hopefully, I always think first game back after the international break, it's difficult to find your top form. And I remember the game at Tynecastle earlier in the season after the break, and we were awful in that first half. We ended up winning 4-1, but we were awful in the first half. And I remember Brendan speaking after the game and talking about there'd been a moment in the first half where one of the Celtic players, he didn't name him, but one of the Celtic players had been pressing as he would have in international duty. So there's wee kind of things like that I think it's difficult for some of the players to go from international duty where they've been told one thing to Celtic, and first game back you often see a bit of a laboured performance. So I'm not expecting too much. I do expect to see clearly a reaction from the team. I hope like us as fans, they've been sitting kind of stewing, certainly for the first 3 or 4 days of the international break, and really frustrated with how the derby went, and hopefully they're ready to come back. We should have some players returning as well, but it's going to be a big old injury report on Friday, isn't it? When you're talking Kasper, you're talking Callum McGregor, Austin Trusty, Paulo Bernardo, James Forrest, Liam Scales. There's quite a few players we have question marks over at the moment.
Yeah, but I guess on the plus side, all of those players potentially coming back is a positive as well. You know, you think about Paulo Bernardo, and I seen that
Mm.
he was posting on Instagram yesterday. He was in Paris with his partner yesterday, so he seemed to be enjoying that. Just a bit of a reminder that, you know, Paulo Bernardo's still very much at Celtic. That injury came at the worst possible time for him, because I felt like, you know, he was getting a bit of a standing in the team. Couple of good performances, couple of not so good performances, particularly in Europe. I think of that Glasgow derby, one of the first games of the season. I thought it was absolutely immense, particularly in the first half. I think there's so much more to come from Bernardo. It's been such a disappointing season for him. It's been arguably my biggest disappointment of the season, not down to his own form per se, but the injury and the time at which he picked up the injury, which lost any momentum that he had going into the team. So when he comes back, I think he'll be, I hate the saying, but it'll be like a new signing, because, you know, the Celtic have been doing so well to sort of rotate without him, but having that extra option in the midfield, a bit of drive, a bit of dig as well. He's a different player to the likes of Engels, McGregor, etc., Hatate. So having him back would be great. You know, you name Liam Scales for squad depth. You name James Forrest. Will be looking to maintain that goal scoring record between now and the end of the season. Brendan Rodgers was joking around with him the other week and saying, you usually come back at this time of year. This is when you come back into the team and make a big impact. Think of the Dundee game last season when he scored a double at Dens Park. So big players, leaders coming back into the team. For me, I think Austin Trusty's a big one, and he's missed the last two Glasgow derbies, and Celtic have conceded 6 goals. And they conceded goals when he went off at half-time as well. I know that Rodgers took him off for tactical reasons at Hampden, but despite Mike Nawrowski doing well, I actually think that Nawrowski's presence unsettled Carter Vickers. I know he had a shaky game himself, Carter Vickers, but even playing with somebody that he's maybe unfamiliar with didn't help him in that game. You know, he maybe would have missed the beat a couple of times with a different defender that does different things. So the sooner that Austin Trusty, and you can have your opinion on Austin Trusty, but I think in terms of a partnership, having Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty is important between now and the end of the season. Build up that connection once again, because for the most part, apart from a couple of not so good performances, they were a pretty solid unit together.
I guess again, just going back to Sinisalo, that's something we're going to have to bear in mind for Saturday. If Sinisalo starts, that it's going to be a bit of an unsettled defence. Clearly, that back four and goalkeeper will never have all played together. So that's it. Probably makes Saturday a bit of a tough one if that's the case. Wombat, give Ralston some minutes. Did anyone catch Alistair Johnson's performance? I think did he get a booking, or maybe I was looking at the wrong game. It'd be interesting to find out how he got on after his poor derby. I think Ralston certainly in the home game for Scotland did pretty well. I think Josh was saying that last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was good in the home game, and then the away game, I think he had a bit of a poor performance, but nobody had a good performance for Scotland. I think we need to underline that nobody was good for Scotland.
Sorry, good in the away game.
He was good in the away game, but really
yeah.
poor in the home game. There's a couple of the goals that maybe could be attributed to him. I think there's a bit of a dual responsibility between him and Kenny McLean for at least one of the goals. One of the goals he fails to track the runner, his marker, and he goes in and scores. I believe that was the second goal that Greece scored. But the away game, Ralston was really good. He actually got a great block in the first leg to deflect a shot onto the post. It was a good defensive block. And he's trusted by Steve Clarke, but there was an interesting one. There was a point in the game, and the commentator said he's now officially got more minutes for Scotland this season than he has for Celtic. You know, so as Wombat was saying, give him some minutes. I think he's had some minutes for Scotland, so there doesn't need to be that worry. I mean, if Alistair Johnson, and I've only seen, the only clips that I've seen is him holding off Cameron Carter-Vickers in a bit of a scuffle, him playing peacemaker, and a bit of a grudge match between Canada and the USA. Canada won that 2-1, I believe. But apart from that, I didn't see how he got on individually, but I know that Canada won that third place playoff.
Yeah, they did. So I guess he'll be in a bit of a high from that. So team-wise, and obviously there's some questions over injuries, but we're thinking probably Sinisalo in goal. We'll wait and see. Johnston, Carter Vickers, Trusty, Schlupp. McGregor, you're hoping is back in. Engels, I think, will start. Probably Hatate, although maybe McCowan. Bernardo probably wouldn't come back and start right away. And then what are you doing front three? Because we do have options here. Adam Ida's just scored. Do you factor in Dyson Maeda playing in Asia? Do you play Maeda off the left and get Ida starting, given that he's just scored, and maybe you put Jota on the right, or do you have Kuhn there? You've got Yang potentially as well, James Forrest maybe off the bench. So it seems suddenly that we've maybe got some options in that area again.
Yeah, which is good. But for me, I think Celtic, although Dyson Maeda did score against Rangers, he was positioned on the wing. I know he found a great position in the box, but he did score when Adam Ida was on the park. He was. I believe that was the case. Adam Ida was brought on, and then Maeda scored because it was Jota on the right hand side and Maeda on the left. It was a good header over James Tavernier. For me, Maeda's best position, and it's been proven now, is through the middle for Celtic. As much as Adam Ida scored, and it was a decent goal against Bulgaria, I would want Maeda to play through the middle. I think the big question mark for me is who plays on the right wing between Nicholas Kuhn and Yang Hyun-jun. I think maybe the international break has saved Kuhn in that sense, where if there was a midweek game after that Rangers game, I think he would have been dropped to the bench. But having that week and a half, 2 weeks might get Rodgers, even with the travelling with Yang as well, might be a factor. He might just say, I'll put you on the bench and I'll start Nicholas Kuhn and give him another chance. Because he'll have had a week, 2 weeks to think about that performance. He got hooked at half time. His overall record against Rangers is very hit and miss. So he'll have been thinking about that and thinking about how he can improve before the end of the season. He's still got the time to change the narrative of the fact that he had a good first half of the season and then his numbers dropped off when Jota arrived, because that is certainly the case. You look at the numbers before and after Jota, and there has been a drop-off for Nicholas Kuhn. But he can change that narrative.
Before then as well, no? Would you not say maybe before Jota? Like it's not a case of Jota arriving and Kuhn going off a cliff. I'd say Kuhn was kind of struggling for a fair amount of time. He scored a few goals, but he's not been the player of like the Leipzig game kind of since then, has he?
Since Jota arrived, he's got 4 goals and assists in 2 months, which, you look at what he was doing in the first half of the season, he'd get that in about 2 games for Celtic. There was that game, was it against Falkirk, that he got something like 2 goals and 2 assists and really changed the game. So that's all his goal contributions in about half an hour. That's what he's had in the past 2 months for Celtic. Maybe it's not as rigid as the fact that Jota's came in and automatically his levels dropped, because I think there were signs that his level couldn't be maintained and he was going to have a wee bit of a decline. But I felt like that was a good starting point to analyse the 2 players, and there has been a bit of a difference. Jota's made a good impact. I'm still reserving judgment fully on him until next season, until he gets a full pre-season. But for Kuhn, that second half of the season has been quite disappointing for him, and I think Celtic and Celtic supporters can be quite thankful that Maeda's had such a good second half to sort of pick up the slack when it comes to goal scoring. Because if he didn't, then I think goals would have been difficult to come by.
We definitely need Nicholas Kuhn to finish the season strongly, because we saw for that period, however long it was basically from the start of the season up until about Christmas time, I would say, when he was just electric, and he was at times he was kind of winning games on his own for us with his goals, his performances. I remember even when he wasn't necessarily playing well in a game, he would still give us a big moment. Remember the Kilmarnock away game when we kind of get battered at times in that game, and he popped up with the crucial second goal, and it was just he was just on fire at that stage. And there's no doubt he's kind of, I don't know quite what it is with Nicholas Kuhn. He's maybe just playing within himself a little bit. He needs to finish the season strongly, because he can be such an important player for us. Imagine you live in a world where you've got Maeda, Kuhn and Jota all firing at the same time. I mean, that is, I wait for that day, because that is going to be spectacular if and when that happens. So, yeah, hopefully Kuhn can get back. I thought he was better against Hibs in the first half a couple of weeks ago. So that's what made the Derby performance so disappointing. But to be fair to him, he wasn't the only one that day. I mean, virtually everyone had a bad game. So he needs to bring a better performance, as do a lot of players. Henry McClarson wondering how Tillio's doing. Last seen actually was at the game. He scored in the Melbourne derby. Pretty early goal, pretty good goal as well for City. So I don't think he's involved with the Socceroos. Pretty sure he's not. They play China round about now. I think it's kicking off. Helen saying Dyes in the Player of the Year, no contest. Agreed. Henry McClarson, maybe we'll play Bain. Don't rule him out. All good. Jerry, Sinisalo will need to be on his toes after that defensive display in the Glasgow derby. Ian says, this is a title right here on Saturday. Winning, we are on the way. Lose it, and it gets me nervous. And Jerry saying, Celtic need to step up a gear on Saturday and the rest of the season. Okay, so we've got Japan just kicking off. If people fancy, I don't know what channel that'll be on, but you'll be able to watch Dais and Maeda. Just checking it. Still 0-0. Dais and Maeda starting up front for Japan. Ryo Hatate on the bench, and Yang is on the bench for South Korea. They kick off in 20 minutes or so. Okay, Ryan, we'll head off unless you've got anything else for us.
No, I think we've covered absolutely everything. Not a bad half hour, considering it's been all international football for the past week and a half. But there's always something to talk about with regard to Celtic. It's never boring, and it's never a pain either. So delighted to be back on this morning.
Great stuff. There's more on the website as always, everyone. So check that out. And as far as the YouTube is concerned, we will be back tomorrow for Wednesday's morning briefing. I'll chat to you then.